The Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries will come to order. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome our members, witnesses, and our guests in the audience today. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of this subcommittee at any time. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chair and the ranking member. I therefore ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted in accordance with Committee Rule 3.0. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the Congressman from South Dakota, Mr. Johnson, be allowed to participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. We are here today to consider 4 legislative measures: the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System Expansion Feasibility Study Act, sponsored by Representative Johnson of South Dakota; H.R. 7331, the Dakota Mainstem Water Supply Project Feasibility Study Act, also sponsored by Representative Johnson of South Dakota; H.R. 7515, to direct the Secretary of the Interior to convey the Nisqually Indian Tribe the Clear Creek Hatchery infrastructure, sponsored by Representative Strickland of Washington; and H.R. 8259, the Federal Water Projects Consultation Improvement Act of 2026, sponsored by Representative Bentz of Oregon. I now recognize myself for a 5-minute opening statement. Today, the Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries will hold a legislative hearing on 4 bills. Our first 2 bills, introduced by Congressman Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, would authorize the Bureau of Reclamation to conduct feasibility studies for the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System and the Dakota Mainstem Regional Water System, respectively. Like many other parts of the country experiencing population growth, South Dakota and the surrounding regions are experiencing increased demand for water resources. The Lewis and Clark Regional Water System currently uses wells and pipelines drawing from the Missouri River aquifer to serve more than 350,000 people in southeast South Dakota, northwest Iowa, and southeast Minnesota. To meet growing demand, the system will need to expand its water capacity in the coming years. The feasibility study authorized by this legislation is a key step towards this goal. Likewise, the Dakota Mainstem Regional Water System, which was formed in 2023, would bring additional water supplies to South Dakota and the neighboring regions, including the Santee Reservation of the Santee Sioux Tribe in Nebraska. The feasibility study authorized by this bill would evaluate the benefits and costs of options to advance the project. I appreciate Congressman Johnson's work on these bills to deliver water supplies to his constituents. Our third bill, introduced by Congressman Cliff Bentz of Oregon, is the Federal Water Projects Consultation Improvements Act of 2026. This legislation seeks to strengthen and formalize coordination between federal agencies and local water contractors during Endangered Species Act Section 7 consultations. Section 7 consultations can significantly affect water deliveries to agricultural producers, municipalities, and rural communities. Water users know their systems and understand the trade-offs best, but are currently cut out from ESA consultations. To strengthen coordination between agencies and the local contractors, the bill grants water agencies several rights during consultations, including opportunities to regularly discuss and submit information, early notification and explanation when water deliveries may be reduced, and access to schedules for preparing biological assessments and biological opinions. This bill expands a successful provision of the WIN Act westwide, and I want to thank Congressman Bentz for his ongoing leadership and advocacy on this issue. Our last bill, introduced by Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland of Washington, would transfer ownership of the Clear Creek Hatchery from the federal government to the Nisqually Indian Tribe, which will increase opportunities for infrastructure maintenance and improvements. With that, I want to thank the witnesses and our members for being here today, and I yield back. I now recognize Ranking Member Hoyle for her opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses for being here today. On today's agenda, we have 2 bills from my colleague, Representative Johnson, to require feasibility studies for regional water supply projects. The The first of these bills is H.R. 7287, the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System Expansion Feasibility Study Act. The Lewis and Clark Regional Water System has been under construction since 2004 to provide reliable water to more than 350,000 people across southeast South Dakota, southwest Minnesota, and northwest Iowa. The second of these bills, H.R. 7331, the Dakota Mainstream Water Supply Project Feasibility Studies Act. This project is intended to address ongoing water reliability challenges, including drought and water quality across South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota. I appreciate Representative Johnson's leadership on reliable water access for growing communities in South Dakota, and I look forward to hearing more about these bills today. Next, we'll turn to Representative Strickland's bill, which would convey the Clear Creek Hatchery in Washington to the Nisqually Indian tribe. The tribe has stewarded salmon in the Nisqually River for countless generations and has reserved fishing rights to the salmon in the basin. Today, salmon produced by the Clear Creek Hatchery are necessary to meet the harvest goals and conservation obligations. As part of the tribe's commitment to the salmon, it has managed the Clear Creek Hatchery for decades, despite receiving no federal funding or staff support. But even though Clear Creek is located within the Nisqually tribe's reservation, the tribe handles all operations and maintenance. The building and facilities are owned by the Fish and Wildlife Service. This makes the tribe ineligible for federal grants through the Bureau of Indian Affairs that could otherwise help fund capital improvements. It makes no sense, and it's not working for anyone, least of all the salmon. H.R. 7515 would transfer ownership to the tribe, allowing them to assume full management and pursue relevant federal grants. I appreciate Chairman Choke being here to speak to the tribe's work and to support healthy salmon runs, and how this transfer will make that work easier. So thank you. And finally, we have H.R. 8259 from my friend and colleague, Representative Cliff Bentz. This bill would require the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and National Marine Fisheries Service to consult with water users as part of the endangered species review process for the Bureau of Reclamation water projects. While this bill would apply nationally, I know there's significant interest in these issues in the Klamath Basin, and I'd like to thank Ms. Nielsen for traveling here to discuss this bill. I fully support meaningful public input in federal decision-making, and I believe decisions are stronger when they do reflect input and collaboration from all stakeholders. I have concerns that this bill would increase the input opportunities for one type of stakeholder, though. Tribes, fishermen, conservation groups might not purchase federal water, but they do have a direct interest in ensuring water flows are sufficient for endangered salmon populations. It also adds procedural requirements that would effectively require the services to provide analysis on alternatives and provide justification for each component of a biological opinion. And I appreciate that transparency. But I have a concern the new requirements would slow down the ESA consultation process at a time when NOAA and Fish and Wildlife Services are historically short-staffed because of the massive cuts we've seen to our federal workforce. So there's no funding for added staffing to address the added workload, and I think that that's important that we don't put forward unfunded mandates. So I remain open to learning more about this proposal, hearing from all perspectives, and I want to ensure that all voices are at the table and remain the priority, those balanced stakeholder engagements. And lastly, I would like to ask unanimous consent that Representative Strickland of Washington be allowed to participate in today's hearing, and I yield back.
Yes, without objection, so ordered. I will now introduce our first panel, and as is typical with legislative hearings, the bill sponsors are recognized for 5 minutes each to discuss their bills. I now recognize Congressman Bentz for 5 minutes.